Hello, this is Scottish Independence Podcast, episode number 115. This time I spoke to Jordan Daly and Liam Stevenson from the TIE campaign. The TIE campaign's a recent development, but it's gathering speed and effectiveness very, very quickly. I think you'll find it interesting, but just to give you an idea what this is about, I'll give you a little statistic first. 54% of LGBT students in Scottish schools are deliberately and regularly self-harming. In the interview, there's a lot more of these worrying statistics. Also, we find out what the TIE campaign have been trying to do about it and the successes they've been having. It's a great interview, so we'll just go straight to it and I'll have a wee word with you at the end. Hi Jordan, hi Liam, how's it going?
Aye, not bad.
Yep, everything's good, thanks.
I believe you've just been to a meeting.
We have. We just left the Commonweal offices. We were having a catch-up with them and a couple of drinks. Yeah, it went pretty well.
Commonweal people in there have been the people who have supported this campaign right from the very start, and to be honest, without the help that we've received from the people in there, we certainly would not have been as, I'd hasten to say successful, but we certainly wouldn't be in the position we're at right now without the guys' help.
It's good to hear it, and I suppose before we get round to your campaign in itself, I think it's maybe a good introduction into it if we get into what the problem was that sparked the campaign.
Basically, I'm gay. I'm 20 years old, and when I was at school, probably like most people that will actually listen to this podcast, and yourself, Michael, you'll remember as well when you were at school, homophobia is rampant in the hallways. It's huge, and back then, like, people don't seem to think that it's really. I don't think it would ever really cross anyone's mind that it's actually homophobia. It's just, oh, that's so gay, or you're a poof, or like the kind of language that kids are commonly hearing. And like I say, so I'm gay. So when I was around 12 or 13, I realised that I was gay. I really didn't want to be gay, and I really started struggling, really struggling to accept myself. And that's already a really difficult process. Liam talks about something called the internal and external struggle, which I'll let him explain later on. But for me, it was already a really difficult process to try and figure out, one, why am I attracted to people of the same sex when everyone around me is telling me that I should have a girlfriend? Two, okay, I really don't want to be gay. I don't want to be the person that gets bullied in school or the person that is victimised. So how do I change it? And then three, having to keep this huge secret as soon as I realised that I couldn't change it, and going to a school where there is homophobia in the hallways, where guys are calling each other faggots and poofs and dykes and queers, and all of a sudden you're like, well, that's what I am, so what do I do? So straight away you're keeping it a secret. And what didn't help either was the fact that my school just didn't know how to tackle it. I went to a Roman Catholic school in North Lanarkshire, and another problem that I had at school, which persists today, which again we'll speak about a bit later, is that a lot of teachers themselves are certainly not smelling of roses. When I was at school, I had comments from teachers. They used to say things like, being gay is an unnatural sin. One RE teacher I remember was really confused as to how the parts fit, so her conclusion was that it wasn't natural and it was a psychological disorder. And then another teacher had basically told us that clearly God didn't like gays, and that was why he gave us AIDS, to try and get rid of us. So this is the kind of comments that I was hearing in my time at school, so of course I was never ever going to come out. And what I will say as well is if you speak to kind of any LGBT person, mostly us will actually talk to you about that struggle that we have when we're trying to accept ourselves and when we're trying to figure out what's going on in our heads. But it really was made 100% worse by the climate that my school had created. So, like I said, I went through this when I was around about 12 or 13. I eventually got to a point where I'd considered suicide. I'd really planned how I was going to do it. I had it all kind of sussed out and to a really bad place. And since I'm 20 now, but I'd since spent the next dealing with all these issues, because what essentially happens when you go through something like that is you try and suppress it, but that suppression always creates a lot of scars that never actually heal. So the TIE campaign essentially came out of that story, because my whole story and my whole experience, like I said, I spent 7 years trying to suppress it and get away from it. I then met Liam last year after the referendum, and all of a sudden me and Liam seemed to click very well, and it all just came back out. And suddenly I kind of started dealing with it, because all of a sudden there was someone there that I kind of trusted on a new level to actually talk to about what had happened to me at school, and when I was a young gay teenager. And basically that was why we decided to launch the campaign. But something that really kind of disturbs me is that for a long time I kind of thought that what I went through was only me that went through it, and then all of a sudden you're faced with the reality that actually no, it's happening en masse across Scotland. I'm going to throw out a few statistics that we've repeatedly used throughout this campaign. That we've pushed these. They're from Stonewall Scotland, and they were uncovered in 2012. But over the past 4 months since we launched, we've pushed these right into the sphere in Scotland. We've been putting out there in media, and they always seem to shock people, because I think what a lot of people just expect is, oh, hey, we get marriage equality, that must be it, and it's not. Yeah, so basically, 26%, and that boils down to 1 in 4 LGBT youth in Scottish schools have attempted suicide as a result of homophobic bullying. So that's a quarter of LGBT youth are attempting suicide in our schools right now as a result of homophobic bullying. On top of that, 54%, so over half, are deliberately and regularly self-harming. I spoke about language in my school earlier on, but 99% of pupils in Scotland are hearing phrases such as "that's so gay" in school. 97% hear phrases such as "poof," "faggot" and "dyke," and as a result, 54%, again over half, of LGBT youth do not feel part of their school community. So what do you think about those statistics, Michael?
Well, I'm just sitting listening to this, and I went to a Roman Catholic school in Glasgow, but I'm 37 years old. So you can say that was from, 25 to 20 years ago, the time I was there. And to be honest, when I was at school, it was an unmentionable thing. I mean, but also, what sex education they did talk about was, shall we say, I've written a couple of articles about it in my time, shall we say, from a Roman Catholic perspective, and slightly unrealistic even about heterosexual behaviour for teenagers and hormones and stuff. They don't quite have the right idea. But I had imagined that in this day and age, something else would have come up, and you're telling me that is it just completely passed over, ignored as a subject? Or is it individual teachers? Or, is there some way to speak for people in a difficult situation like this? Or is it just, again, is it still just unmentionable?
Well, one of the big problems was Section 28, which essentially was a Thatcherite policy that was put in, and it basically made it illegal for schools to discuss homosexuality. So part of the problem that we've got, so it was repealed in 2001 in Scotland. So when you were at school, Michael, you would have been under Section 28, which is why it was actually illegal to even talk about it. And if any teachers did, then they would have been prosecuted. But what we are seeing now in Scotland, 15 years since the repeal of Section 28, is the remnants and the aftermath of that, because one of the problems is that teachers right now do not have to have compulsory equality and diversity training, and we still have many of the same teachers that were actually teaching under Section 28, and they've never been trained or retrained since Section 28, so they don't, as far as they're concerned, they still can't speak about it, or they're not sure where the boundaries are, they're not confident enough to tackle these issues. And that's one thing that we've been calling for repeatedly throughout this campaign, is that the government really has to be prioritising teacher training. We've kind of set a benchmark of having a minimum of one teacher in every single school, including faith schools across the country, that is fully trained in how to deal with, teach and respond to LGBT issues and LGBT pupils. We actually spoke about this in Parliament. A couple of my friends and quite a few people that we spoke to whilst campaigning are trainee teachers currently, and what really, really worries me is that this is young teachers in their 20s, just about to go into school, and I always ask them the same question. I say, so if a young boy comes up to you and says, Miss whatever, I'm in a boy's body, but I actually feel like a girl, can you help me? Would you know how to deal with that? And they're all like, no, absolutely not. We wouldn't even know what to do if somebody says, how can I come out? So what really worries me is that new teachers that are going in, there's a new batch of teachers every year going into school systems, and they're going to be a perpetuation of the problem through no fault of their own necessarily. But if they're not trained in how to do this and how to tackle these issues, then in 10 years' time, we're going to be sitting here faced with the exact same statistics and the exact same problem, and way more kids going through what I went through when I was at school.
When you explain it like this, I think most people would think it's a very sensible thing and it has to be done, but I imagine also that you probably meet some religious resistance with such a campaign?
Well, so far, Michael, we've only received, we've not received any animosity or any negativity directly, but we do know that a kind of small religious group in Scotland did write to the petitions committee before we went in there, calling on them to throw out our petition because this was a Trojan horse and so on and so forth, where we were going to indoctrinate homosexuality into these children, completely ignoring what this campaign's all about. And that's the only public negativity or resistance we've felt so far, because it's been overwhelmingly positive. And I don't come from the LGBT community myself, and I'm talking to people, friends, workmates, etc., and everyone is really supportive, because ultimately what we're talking about here is we're talking about children. We're talking about children who have been damaged. We're talking about children who are killing themselves. We're talking about children who are trying to kill themselves, and that is not acceptable. And everybody, whether you might be gay, straight, bi, trans, everybody knows children. Everyone has children in their family, and the majority, everyone I've spoke to up until now is completely on board with what we're trying to do. And in fact, one of the things I was a wee bit reluctant to do was to approach my branch of the trade union. I work as a petrol tanker driver, so you can probably imagine the sort of attitudes and language that's used in that industry. But my shop steward took it on, and he took it to the branch and proposed that they support this campaign and financially and give us ongoing financial support. And there was not one word. There's not one person spoke out and had any complaints about doing this. If everyone in my trade union can understand, and bearing in mind, without being too cruel to some of these people, lorry drivers, some lorry drivers are not the most intelligent and certainly not the most progressive of people. But if these people can even see that this is something that's very, very important, then it shows you, that we're on the right track. And also, the amount of people so far that have backed this campaign publicly has been so diverse. We've had everyone from Amir Anwar to Kat Boyd to Nicola Field from Lesbians and Gay Support the Minors, to Robin McAlpine, to Miss Transgender UK, to Alicia Garza from the co-founder of Black Lives Matter. The support has been absolutely fantastic and so varied. And in fact, one of my favourite ones is even Pat Nevin, the retired Scottish international footballer. He's a supporter, and that really shows us that we've got such a diverse group of people supporting this campaign, and it gives us the energy to continue in pushing this case, because it is so desperately needed. We need to offer an alternative to children who are thinking about hanging themselves off trees, who are thinking about taking razors to their flesh, who are dropping out of school, who are not attaining the grades and they probably should be, and which in turn obviously damages their future prospects for work, etc. We need to look after the LGBT community. That is a fact.
Totally agree. But, with issues like this, there tends to be a vocal religious minority that do tend to, whether they're being wrong-headed or not, they tend to be quite vocal in their opposition to such things.
The most outrage we've had so far actually has been from America, American right-wing Christians.
Oh, there we go. That's what I was thinking of.
So we've had we've had the death threats and stuff from Americans, from machine gun totting Americans there, sending us death threats, etc. Yeah, but as of in Scotland so far, we've not had any real negativity at all. That might come at a later date, I suppose.
There's been, don't get me wrong, we learned quite a valuable lesson. Last week in particular, this campaign ended up going mainstream. A lot of the big media publications picked it up and ran with the story. So last week we learned quite a valuable lesson, just not to bother reading the comment section. So it's mostly online that we do kind of get little bursts of negativity, and it is really just the usual stuff. Or you're pushing the gay agenda, you're trying to indoctrinate children, why should we teach kids about perversion? So don't get us wrong, it does exist. It certainly is most likely going to come out a little bit more as the campaign gets bigger and as we actually start properly sitting down with the government to tackle it. But thus far, the vast majority of support that we're getting is overwhelmingly positive. Like Liam says, he's outlined kind of a lot of the key supporters of this campaign. And what I really like about it, for personal reasons as well, I mean, the tanker drivers thing really it really makes me quite emotional, because when I was younger, people Liam's sitting next to me just now. He's a big, manly man. He's got his skinhead.